So you want to be a heavy equipment operator, and on paper, it looks like the last true frontier of blue-collar dominance. You climb into a climate-controlled cab, you grip a pair of joysticks, and suddenly you are moving literal tons of earth with the flick of a thumb. It feels like wearing an exoskeleton that makes you a titan. The industry markets this job as a mix of power, freedom, and the kind of high pay that ignores the traditional 4-year degree treadmill. But take a breath and look closer, because the reality is much heavier than the machine. The primary hook is the money. In the world of the IUOE, the International Union of Operating Engineers, the pay isn't just a wage, it is a structured ladder. A rookie or apprentice might start at 50 to 60% of the journeyman rate, which usually lands them somewhere between $22 and $28 an hour, depending on the local market. Keep in mind that these numbers represent the base pay, but the total package is what matters. When you add the health insurance, the pension contributions, and the annuity funds, the hourly cost to the contractor can easily top $70. Beyond the starting rate, the wage progression is contingent on hours in the seat. You don't just get a raise for good behavior. You have to document 2,000 hours of operating time, often across 3 different classes of machinery, to move up the bracket. This is the industrial equivalent of an apprenticeship journey. You're expected to demonstrate proficiency on a hydraulic excavator, a wheel loader, and a bulldozer before you even sniff journeyman wages. It is a grueling, repetitive process that separates the hobbyists from the true professionals. But here is where the cheerful surface story begins to break down. You aren't just paid for your time. You are paid for the massive, expensive liability of your hands. The union structure creates a rigid divide. You are either in the fold, enjoying the benefits of a collectively bargained agreement, or you are scrambling in the non-union world. The non-union operators often trade those guaranteed pension bumps for a slightly higher hourly cash check. It feels like a win until the work dries up in the winter. In the non-union sector, the volatility is extreme. When a project hits a snag or a general contractor loses a bid, the layoffs are instantaneous. There is no bumping system where you take a less desirable shift to keep your health coverage active. You are literally just unemployed the second the site is buttoned up. Without the collective safety net, you are responsible for maintaining your own health insurance premiums, which, for a family, can consume nearly $1,200 of that extra cash every single month. It is a dangerous, predatory trade-off. Before you even touch a throttle, you face the hidden cost of the CDL license. The commercial driver license is the absolute entry requirement for moving equipment between job sites. If you can't transport the machine, you are effectively useless to a foreman. Obtaining a Class A CDL is not a weekend hobby. It requires medical exams, written tests, and hours of behind-the-wheel training that can cost anywhere from $3,000 to $7,000 out of your own pocket. Most people don't realize this is an investment you make before you are ever hired. The CDL requirement adds a layer of immense responsibility. When you are hauling a 50-ton excavator on a lowboy trailer, you are governed by Department of Transportation, DOT, regulations. You have to track your hours of service in an electronic logging device, ELD. If you get pulled over and your logs are off by even 15 minutes, you are looking at heavy fines and potential suspension of your license. You aren't just an operator. You are a professional driver who is personally liable for every pound of that load. Once you land a seat in the machine, you learn that the ground is rarely your friend. Site conditions are the great equalizer. You aren't operating in a perfect paved lot. You are wrestling with mud that acts like quicksand, sucking the tracks off a machine if you aren't careful. Heavy rain can turn a construction site into a quagmire that swallows a 50,000-kilogram excavator up to its belly. When that happens, the production schedule dies. You aren't working. You are stuck, waiting for a tow, and listening to the project manager scream over the radio. Managing ground pressure is a sophisticated physics problem. You have to understand the soil composition, whether it is clay, sandy loam, or saturated silt, and adjust your machine's footing accordingly. If you operate an excavator with too much aggression in soft ground, the swing of the house can cause the machine to tip, leading to a catastrophic overturn. These machines weigh more than a suburban house, and when they tip, they don't just scratch the paint. They destroy their own hydraulic systems and crush anything in the immediate vicinity. Mud is just the beginning. Road projects are the bread and butter of this industry, and they are notoriously lonely. You might be assigned to a highway expansion project that is 100 kilometers from your front door. That means 2 hours of commuting every single day, often starting well before the sun rises. You are spending your life in a pickup truck or a cramped hotel room, living out of a cooler, just to spend 10 hours a day sitting in a machine that smells like diesel fumes and stale coffee. The per diem lifestyle is a myth sold to entice young workers. Yes, you might get a daily stipend for food and lodging, but it rarely covers the true cost of living away from home. You are paying for a hotel room that has no kitchen, forcing you into a diet of fast food or expensive pre-made meals. Your health suffers. Your sleep cycle is constantly disrupted by early start times, and you miss the milestones of your family life. You are literally trading your presence at home for a slightly larger paycheck. The work itself demands a level of precision that outsiders simply don't grasp. You aren't just moving dirt. You are grading a site to within 2 centimeters of the engineer's plan. You are digging trenches for fiber optic cables that have to dodge existing, unmarked utilities that aren't on any map. If you strike a gas line, you aren't just looking for a new job. You are looking at potential legal consequences and public safety disasters. This isn't just playing in the sandbox. It is high-stakes surgery with a machine that can crush a building. Utility strikes are the nightmare scenario for any operator. There is a precise protocol for daylighting pipes, using a smaller bucket or even hand tools to locate the line before the heavy steel teeth of the machine rip through it. The call before you dig systems are fallible, and the markers left by utility companies are often decades old and inaccurate. You have to develop a sixth sense for the feel of the bucket digging into the ground. If you feel a resistance that isn't rock or root, you stop instantly. That hesitation is what keeps you out of jail. Beyond precision, there is the machine maintenance aspect. On many remote job sites, if your track tensioner fails or you blow a hydraulic seal, you are your own mechanic. You keep a specialized toolkit in your truck, and you know how to perform a field repair under the scorching sun or in the driving rain. You aren't just an operator, you are a master of grease guns, filter wrenches, and hydraulic fluid management. If the machine goes down, you don't get paid, so you ensure it stays operational at any cost. The mechanical knowledge required is staggering. You need to understand the difference between a Tier 3 and a Tier 4 engine's emissions control systems, specifically the diesel exhaust fluid, DEF, cycles. If you ignore a warning light, the machine goes into limp mode, effectively neutering its power until a computer diagnostic is performed. Modern equipment is a rolling supercomputer. You are managing digital throttle response, GPS-guided grading systems, and real-time telemetry that reports your fuel efficiency back to a corporate office every single hour. The telemetry aspect is a double-edged sword. Every move you make, every second the engine idles without load, and every bucket you lift is recorded and sent to the cloud. Project managers use this data to optimize productivity. If you are idling for too long while waiting for a haul truck, you get an automated alert or a reprimand. It creates a culture of constant surveillance where you are never truly alone, even inside the cabin. The machine is telling on you, and that pressure to keep moving is constant. Then there is the silent, grinding toll. Every second you are in the seat, your body is being hammered by machine vibration. It is a constant, low-frequency tremor that travels from the tracks, through the frame, and straight into your spine. After 10 years, your back and your joints feel like they have aged 30. There is no such thing as an operator who doesn't have chronic lower back pain. You are quite literally shaking your skeleton apart for a paycheck that feels generous at 25, but looks much smaller when you factor in your future physical therapy bills. The ergonomic reality of these cabs is often exaggerated. While companies advertise air ride seats, the reality is that the suspension systems on older equipment are blown out, and newer equipment is tuned for extreme responsiveness, which transmits more shock. You are effectively living on a vibrating plate for 50 hours a week. Long-term exposure to whole-body vibration, WBV, is a documented occupational hazard linked to nerve damage and disc herniation. You don't see the damage in the first year, but by year 5, the inflammation is a permanent fixture of your morning routine. To combat the physical decay, seasoned operators invest in a rigorous routine of stretching and strength training. But when you are working 12-hour days, going to the gym at 7 to 12 p.m. feels like an impossible hurdle. Instead, you rely on anti-inflammatories, heating pads, and the hope that you can finish the contract before your L5-S1 disc finally gives out. It is a slow, quiet attrition. You watch the older guys walk with a rigid, shuffling gait, and you realize that they are the ghosts of your future if you don't find a way out. The seasonality of the work is the final barrier for many. Heavy infrastructure is tethered to the weather. In many parts of the country, the ground freezes in late November and doesn't thaw until April. That creates a boom and bust cycle. You work 70 hours a week in the summer, banking money to cover the months you are laid off. If you haven't mastered the art of extreme budgeting, the winter layoff will destroy you. The stress of not knowing if the callback will come in March leads to a high turnover rate among young operators. Winter, however, isn't just a time for rest. It is a time for shop work. Many top operators stay on during the winter to act as master mechanics, rebuilding the undercarriages and repainting the rusty frames of the fleet. This is where you learn the true mechanics of the iron. You strip a bulldozer to its tracks and rollers, replacing steel pins that have been hammered into shape by months of abuse. It is backbreaking, dangerous work in an unheated metal shed, but it earns you a reputation as the guy who keeps the company moving. The hierarchy in the shop is just as rigid as the site. The head mechanic is often the most respected person on the crew, even more than the foreman, because he is the one who decides whose machine gets repaired first. If you want to move up, you spend your winter nights in the shop, learning the torque specs of a Cat diesel engine and the intricacies of hydraulic manifolds. You are essentially doing a second, unpaid apprenticeship in heavy machinery engineering. It is grueling, but it secures your position for the upcoming spring season. Why do they burn out? It is the combination of the physical decay and the lack of autonomy. You are a cog in a massive multi-million-dollar machine, and when something breaks or the budget gets slashed, you are the first thing that gets cut. The romantic idea of the heavy equipment operator vanishes the first time you are forced to work a 14-hour shift in a blizzard just to keep a contract on schedule. Many realize that the trade-off between the money and their quality of life just isn't sustainable for a 30-year career. The burnout is accelerated by the hero culture of the industry. Construction companies love to promote the idea of the operator who never calls out, who will work in hurricane-force winds to move dirt, and who treats the machine like a mistress. They glorify the 80-hour week, but when you are sitting in that cab for the 14th hour, your focus wanes. That is when accidents happen. A moment of distraction, a slight misjudgment of the swing angle, and you are looking at a $3 million insurance claim and the end of your career. The mental tax is just as high as the physical one. You are constantly monitoring multiple variables: the grade level, the position of the ground crew, the stability of the trench walls, and the communication over the two-way radio. You are in a flow state for 8 to 10 hours a day, which is mentally exhausting. By the time you get home, you have nothing left for conversation or engagement. You are simply a shell of a person, waiting for your alarm to go off for the next day's grind. Management often views you as a commodity, similar to a gallon of diesel or a ton of aggregate. This commodification is reinforced by the high turnover of entry-level staff. They bring in hundreds of young guys who quit within 6 months, so the company doesn't invest in their long-term growth or comfort. You have to fight tooth and nail to be treated as a professional, to get access to better machines, or to earn a seat in the newer, more ergonomic cabs. It is a cynical environment that expects you to prove your worth every single morning. The transition from operator to foreman is the traditional escape hatch, but even that is a poisoned chalice. As a foreman, you are no longer in the seat. You're in the truck, dealing with angry clients, impossible schedules, and a supply chain that never has what you need. You lose the peace of the cab, which many operators find is the only thing they enjoy about the job. You trade the physical fatigue of the back for the chronic stress of the head. It is a lateral move that often leads to a shorter lifespan due to cortisol and stress. Yet, despite the decay and the stress, there is a legitimate art to the work. Watching a master operator grade a slope is like watching a sculptor. They use the machine's teeth to gently shave the earth, creating a perfect uniform surface that drains water away from a roadway and protects the infrastructure for decades. They do this without a computer, relying on their eyes and their understanding of the machine's geometry. It is a rare, dying skill set in an age of automated GPS grading. There is a deep satisfaction in leaving a physical mark on the world. You look at a highway, a bridge, or a skyscraper, and you know that you moved the foundation for it. You were the one who broke the ground. You were the one who navigated the mud and the utilities. For some, this sense of legacy is enough to overlook the health problems and the lack of time at home. It is a tangible proof of existence in a world that is becoming increasingly digital and abstract. The financial reality of retirement is the final, uncomfortable conversation. While the pension fund is a major benefit of the union life, it assumes a full 30-year career with continuous contributions. If you take a year off because of a surgery, or if the union local goes through a period of low work, your pension benefits are impacted. You cannot rely solely on the union for your golden years. You need to be aggressively saving in a 401k or personal investments, which is incredibly difficult on a fluctuating blue-collar income. The high pay often leads to lifestyle creep. You see guys buying $80,000 trucks they don't need, financing them over 84 months, and effectively tethering themselves to the job forever. They become wage slaves to the machine. You have to maintain a minimalist mindset to survive the downturns. If you can live on 60% of your income and invest the rest, you might actually be able to walk away from the seat at 55. Most guys don't do this, and they end up working until their bodies fail. So here is the final verdict. To be a top-tier operator, you have to be more than a laborer. You have to be a technician, a mechanic, and a surveyor all rolled into one. You are trading your physical health and your ability to be at home for a wage that is high, but rarely enough to retire on comfortably without a decade of sacrifice. Mastery in this field doesn't look like a shiny award. It looks like a clean site, an intact utility line, and a body that still works when you finally hang up your boots for the last time. If you are still interested, you need a plan. Don't walk into a construction firm asking for a job. Go to your local IUOE hall. Apply for the apprenticeship. Treat the apprenticeship like a medical school or a law degree. Study the manuals. Learn the math behind the grades and understand the hydraulic systems. If you treat it like a serious profession, you will be in the top 10% of earners. If you treat it like a job for a guy who couldn't get into college, you will be discarded within 5 years. The industry is also evolving with technology. Semi-autonomous dozers and remotely operated excavators are entering the market. This is where the future of the trade lies. If you are tech-savvy, you can transition from being the guy in the seat to being the guy managing the fleet from a trailer. This is the new frontier for operators who want to avoid the physical wear and tear. You are moving from a physical labor role to a data management role, which is the only way to ensure a career that lasts until your 60s. However, this transition requires a completely different skill set. You need to be proficient in CAD, coordinate systems, and software debugging. You are basically moving into a civil engineering light path. If you are currently an operator, start asking your company about their machine control projects. Volunteer to run the GPS-equipped machines. This is your ticket out of the physical burnout cycle. The industry is desperate for people who can bridge the gap between heavy iron and digital precision. But remember, there is no shortcut to respect. Even if you are operating a machine via a computer, you still need to understand the ground. If you don't know how the soil acts under a load, no software will save you from making a mess. You must start in the dirt. You must know what it feels like to have a machine tip, to fix a hose in the rain, and to be at the mercy of the elements. That experience is what gives you the edge over the desktop engineers who have never spent a day in the field. Many young people are lured into the trade by social media posts showing operators doing trick maneuvers with their machines. This is pure theatre. In reality, that is how you damage a $300,000 piece of equipment and get yourself fired on the spot. Real mastery is boring. It is slow, consistent, and safe. You want to be the operator the foreman requests by name because he knows your site will be done on time and he won't have to deal with a single headache. Boring is profitable. Ultimately, your reputation is your only real asset. Word of mouth in the union travels fast. If you are known as a machine killer who doesn't grease his pivots, or a guy who is always getting into legal trouble on site, you will find it impossible to get the good jobs. If you are known as the guy who takes care of his machine and understands the engineering, you will always be working even when the market is down. You are building a personal brand with every bucket of dirt you move. Think about your life in terms of cost per hour. You have your hourly wage, but you also have your hourly cost to your health and your family life. Is the money worth the cost? For some, the answer is a resounding yes. For others, it is a wake-up call to look for a trade that offers more balance. There is no shame in realizing that this life is not for you. The shame is in wasting 10 years of your youth before you figure out that you were just another temporary asset in a long-term corporate plan. If you are going to commit, do it with your eyes wide open. Accept the physical toll and find ways to mitigate it. Accept the seasonality and plan your finances accordingly. Accept the isolation and keep your connections with home alive. This is not just a job. It is a lifestyle that demands total commitment. If you can manage all of these variables, you will find that there is, indeed, a kind of beauty in the power of these machines and the scale of the world they help to create. At the end of the day, you are building the world people take for granted. Every highway you drive on, every hospital built on a firm foundation, and every utility line keeping the lights on in the city is a testament to someone in a seat. It is invisible, heavy work that defines the modern age. If you can take pride in that, and if you can respect the machine for what it is, then you might just be the kind of person who deserves to be in the cab. But keep your boots scuffed, your eyes sharp, and your back straight. This is the reality of the heavy equipment industry. It is a grind, a profession, and for a few, a calling. Don't let the marketing hype tell you it's all about the money or the power. It's about endurance. It's about the ability to keep your cool when the site is turning into a lake and the superintendent is screaming for production. If you can handle the pressure, the dirt, and the years of vibration, then you are ready to be an operator. Just remember, the machine doesn't care about you. That is your job.